Greetings, friends. Greetings from Jerusalem. Greetings from Sabil. Greetings from the Kumi community. I mean, we started in 2020. Started these webinar events, and it's almost for every week. We've been consistent, and thank you all. Many of you have almost been in every meeting. So we've had multiple speakers. We've covered multiple topics, and it's a witness of how many wonderful people are working hard and are committed for justice and peace. We've had international speakers, local speakers, Palestinians, Israelis, people of different faiths, and people are from secular backgrounds. Everybody is working together to see justice being achieved here in Palestine and Israel. I want to also to thank all of the dedicated friends of Sabil, of the Kumi community, who have been engaged with advocacy and have been following up with the Kumi actions, either writing your representatives or doing any form of nonviolence. Thank you all for your support and solidarity. A few weeks ago, we were informed by friends who attend Kumi meetings about a Palestinian family in Jerusalem who is facing eviction, who has actually in the past few months faced demolition orders, but they were able to fight it back in court. But they're currently facing home evictions. Not this family only in particular, but it's actually a combination of multiple families in the same neighborhood. The people who know Jerusalem, not very far from the old city, on the way towards the Mount of Olives, there are multiple Palestinian neighborhoods, but also Israel and the Israeli municipality has already expressed or has actually have given plans and have already fundraised for these plans of building multiple tourist attractions, whether from Silwan, building David City, or biblical gardens, or museums, turning Jerusalem, at least East Jerusalem or Palestinian areas in East Jerusalem, to somehow like an amusement park. Sadly, our communities do not fit in the plan of the Israeli municipality. So unfortunately, the guest speaker received this morning from the court. The judge have asked him to submit on June 4th. So today is May 30th. So in less than 5 days, and Friday, Saturday, Sunday is a weekend here in Palestine and Israel, he has to prepare a whole arguments why he should not be evicted. You see, the whole logic doesn't make any sense. But when they say like you have 4 days, and actually he has a court order already to be evicted, but that court order was issued without him being present or even aware that there was a court case at court. So the judge was sympathetic and said, no, that's not right. That's not justice. So the judge gave him 4 days to defend his case. And he doesn't even have a lawyer because he has already used many of his resources to find a lawyer to defend his right not for his home to be demolished a few months ago. Sadly, it's very easy. All they have to do is just ask for a specific paper. We know this even as Sabil. They ask us for multiple papers, and these papers could take months of preparations. And then they ask us submit them again. We've lost them. Make some changes. You've missed the signature. Bureaucratic systems are an excellent non-violent tool of oppression. Sadly, Israel uses them, and sadly also Palestinian Authority uses them. So there are multiple groups who use them. Sometimes even our churches use them. It's very sad. In a way, it's to distract people from their attention. So we're going to postpone this event. We're going to keep you updated on the case of Nuruddin from Jerusalem. So we thank Noura, actually, Noura, who was a guest speaker at Kumi multiple weeks ago, that she has brought to our attention the case of Nuruddin. So I spoke with him, and I spoke with some of the people who are working with him. So we have mutual friends. But we're not going to address his case because I don't know enough about it, but we're going to keep you updated, and hopefully we could do some advocacy work to show support. The theme of this week is the original theme of the week, if according to the Kumi calendar that is on our website. Some people have the PDF version of the new book. It's about child fatalities. And sadly, I mean, it is in every conflict zone around the world. Usually the most people who pay the price are not only soldiers, but also civilians, women, children, elderly, and the sick. Civilians, although many times they're only reported as collateral damage, or like a realistic or an understandable casualties of war zones and conflicts, yet each case by itself is a tragedy, regardless of what are the bullets that has caused the death, what is their source, whether it is its foe or friendly fire. Violence is evil, and it's not justifiable. That is from the perspective of Sabir and Palestinian liberation theology, as Reverend Naim writes. But also when the victims are innocent children, it does not make any sense. I myself grew up during the first Intifada, and I was 9 years old when the first time we encountered death at the school. I went to a Quaker school, and Quaker schools, I mean, there isn't a very big Quaker community in Palestine or even around the world. It's a small Christian community, but it is anchored in non-violence. It is anchored in passiveness, in being pacifist. And what we knew at school, that violence was not tolerated, that you could do so many things, and somehow the principal or the people at school would find a way to forgive you and not get you expelled. But only if we get in violence, that's serious business. So we shouldn't be beating up each other. So if we had to fight, we would have to fight outside school. Inside the school, it would have been a very complicated issue. Especially at that time, we were having like plenty of Quaker missionaries who were very strict with the Quaker values, and they were wonderful people, and many of them have touched us in different ways. So we were exposed to, like, as little kids, as children, to what violence is, and especially growing during the first Intifada. So we were little kids, and we would watch the news. Everybody would watch the news, and we would also witness it in the streets. The first Intifada, which is the first uprising among Palestinians, it relied on young people who said, we're not going to act the same way or react the same way our grandparents. When our grandparents just fled the fight, we lost 2/3 of historical Palestinians, and look at us. 2/3 of our people have become refugees. That's not our way. And even it's our parents' generation at that time, we used to be always blaming our parents. We said, why did you lose 1967? Why was there so much, like, why didn't you do a big fight? Look, we've lost Jerusalem. We've lost what has remained of our homeland. And the first Intifada was very special because young people, and you know how young people are always naive, simple. They have a simplistic view of the world. They believe very much that they are immortal. Nothing can happen against them, that they can defeat even death. But that's not the reality, sadly. So we grew up looking at these little kids. They were kids. They were like teenagers, 13, 14, 15, 16-year-old kids. But they were the ones who were challenging the Israeli military, whether by blocking the roads, burning tires, writing graffiti on the wall, or even throwing stones. We always, when we would read, when people would read to us at Sunday school, or our grandparents or our parents would tell us the story of David and Goliath, without going so much into the depth of the theological issues of David and Goliath. But we always saw ourselves as Davids, and the military jeeps and the Israeli army as Goliath, the monster that has defeated everyone in the region, all of the Arab armies, the army that everybody fears. We looked at these little kids, and we were these kids. We'd throw stones as much as we could. I was 9 or 8 years old at that time. So we were organizing, everybody played a role during the first Intifada. Even I remember, like, when we go home, our aunts would speak about how they would go to villages and places and offer free education because the schools were closed. And they were closed for multiple months, years even. We did not go to school, so we had to be homeschooled. And, you know, it's maybe that's the only thing we liked about occupation, that they closed schools as little kids. So we didn't like everything about the occupation, but the idea of, like, you don't have to do homework, that was something exciting for us. But when we were in 3rd grade, something shocking happened at the Friends Boys School, the school that I went to in 1989. A student, his name is Amjad Tawil, and I have his photo over here. He was 9th grade. I don't know if you can see the photo. He was one of the activist students. He was in 9th grade, so I think that makes him like 14 or 15 years old at that time, but he was part of the leadership. He was a Palestinian from the Ramallah Al-Bira area. He was also an American citizen. So some of you who have been engaged within the Palestinian cause might have heard this case. And he was the first Palestinian in Ramallah to be shot and killed by the Israeli army. I just need 1 second. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. So Amjad was 14 or 15 years old, and he was one of the young kids who were like a leader in the school. And he was one of the people who was an organizer. And he would go to the main demonstrations after school. So they were like smaller mini demonstrations that we used to do as little kids, but they were like the serious business demonstrations when kids would go into the center of the city, and it would include older people, and it would be like the serious confrontations with the Israeli army. And he was at this age that he was somehow like he had the courage to go to these demonstrations. And some of you who know Ishaq Rabin, and he at that time he was the leader in Israel, and he made an announcement. He said one of the tactics to put an end to the Palestinian Intifada that relied very much on young kids, on Palestinian kids. He said he had the policy. He said, if you catch Palestinians throwing stones, break their arms with stones. And that was the period that the Israeli army would just make an example of anybody who would be caught, and break his bones. Many of this footage has been, his remarks are official. It was made on TV. It was done, and it was a government policy. And many of the TV shows kids having we remember they used to twist the kids' arms and break it at the elbow with stones. That was the Israeli government policy. We're speaking about 30 years ago, 35 years. even, I mean, it is even today, unfortunately, human rights are not very well respected, but even at that time, it was even less, with less media coverage. And one day we knew that there was a big occasion for people to go into a demonstration. And we, as little kids, we did not participate in. We were too young. It's not like we were, maybe it was a combination, not like our parents would have allowed it, but we were also too afraid to go to these bigger events. We were 8 or 9-year-old kids. And the next day when we came back to school, everybody was looking for Amjad. Amjad never returned. So what parents thought that he was arrested and he was in an Israeli prison, and that is a common practice, sadly, in a part of our reality here in Palestine, that when kids get arrested, it takes a number of days for the Israeli army to announce where they are located. So it's a common scene in Palestine. If you go to Israeli military prisons, you'll find parents trying to get news if their son or their daughter is inside this jail or not, or if anybody has seen him or heard of him. So it was actually for 2 or 3 days, Amjad has disappeared, and the parents were going everywhere, and they could not find any connection. But I remember it was a Sunday evening when the news came out that one of the shepherds in Palestine, in Ramallah, was going with his sheep in the mountains around Ramallah. And this is where he found the body of a dead child. And what was devastating is not that only his body was found there lying dead, that we still remember that there was over 100 cigarette butts on his body. We're talking about a 15-year-old kid. And just the way that Amjad was killed, he was an innocent kid. We knew him on a personal level. He used to play with us soccer, and he wasn't like very different from the other kids who grew up at the school. He was, I mean, just like a normal kid, very caring. He was very good in English because he was born in the US, and he was like an American citizen, and his parents moved back from the US, came back to Palestine. But that was like our first encounter as kids. I remember we were 3rd graders, and we didn't know what death was, and that he was killed. And in a way, we had like different feelings. One, I mean, we were all confused what his death. I think if my memory is right, we understood that we're not going to be able to see him again. Not all of us understand, the concept of death. Because even very few people would have encountered death at that age in the family. But at that time, it was, I think we understood that he's not going to appear. In a way, he was like a hero. In another way, we were also afraid. In another way, we were angry. It was a combination of feelings, and we were overwhelmed. And I remember that the school teachers, especially the Quaker missionaries, didn't know how to deal with us. And I remember that they were really talking and discussing, like, what does this mean? A student at the school was found dead. They must have terrified. They didn't know how this would affect us. And we were having a different conversation. We didn't know. We said, should we go out for a demonstration? What should we do? We were at 2 different universes, or 2 different bubbles. The school was in a bubble. We were in a bubble. I remember they hired a counselor at the school because they felt that we needed to go, and especially the people who knew Amjad. We were forced to go to this counselor just to speak. So, like, we didn't know really what to talk about. So we had to make up stuff. It's sharing and so on. It's not. I personally did not feel that there was a need for a counselor, but maybe others did. But the school felt very energetic in a way, and many people, especially in Ramallah and Al-Biri, they were the first towns that started to immigrate to the US, and many people, 90% or 95% of the people of Ramallah and Al-Biri are currently in the US. and many of them hold important positions and jobs. And they said, you know, we're gonna put, you know, that's okay, Israel can shoot Palestinians, but Israel, I mean, it's a different thing shooting a Palestinian, an American citizen, a child. And I remember for years, every year, every week, we were engaging in advocacy and we spoke and so on. But honestly, the US Embassy never paid attention. I even speak, I'm still friends with the family. Nothing has happened. They just said apologized, and they said, you know, it's their and they said, you know, there isn't anything that they can do. I mean, that's the US Embassy. When you think it is empire, you know, when we read the epistles, when we read the letters of Paul, even 2000 years ago, Paul was able to do certain things because he had Roman citizenship. You know, we're speaking about Romans, you know, at that time it was like, it's like, I mean, it is 2000 years of human rights or citizenship rights, but Romans had this sense that they could do certain things or they would be treated in a certain way. And when we look at, you know, we had these expectations that the US is empire and is going to put its foot down and say, you know, it's not this time, you know, but it was such a great disappointment. I remember for 3 days, the whole country, not only Ramallah, was on strike for Amjad. And that happened 24 years ago now. And sadly, today it's almost like every day or every other day, there's a child fatality. There's a Palestinian who's being shot and there's Palestinians being killed. And it's just, sadly, we don't have strikes. We don't have 3 days strikes. We don't have days of mourning. Sometimes we don't even know that there are Palestinians who were shot and killed. And to tell you the truth, we don't know even if they have a Palestinian citizenship, if they have an American citizenship, if they had a Swedish citizenship, if they have a Swiss citizenship. I mean, it became irrelevant. Somehow, like, we knew that Israel has impunity. We could write a letter, we could try our best, but honestly, there isn't much that we are able to do. And especially when there is conflicts and when there is a war on Gaza, the casualties become in the dozens. You know, it is the whole family of kids might be killed and bombed and so on. And sometimes even as human natures, we believe, like, why would somebody do it? You know, it must be a mistake, or it must be there's a justification. And we get continuously shocked when Israeli investigations, Israeli human rights organizations say that this was actually they're not sure that it is, to be very polite about it, they're not sure that this was a mistake, or that Israel did not do the right procedures in warfare and so on. And what is even making it worse for us is that we Palestinians, we have even become so much self-conscious of the words that we say. I remember when we were, when Amjad died or was found killed, we used to even tell the school, although it did not make any sense and there's no logic on it, but because the friend school was an American school, an American base, we said, it's your fault. So we held the people accountable as little kids. Because, I mean, that's the connection that we could do. It's an American school. He's an American citizen. He got killed. That means that there is the US is an ally of Israel. So, like, with this childish understanding. But today, even when we advocate and we speak, even like organizations like Defense of Children International, when we have Al-Haq sending reports, even the organizations that report these violations, these killings, these crimes, could easily be accused of terrorism, of being anti-Semitic. Even it's not only that Israel has managed, or the Israeli occupation has managed to deprive the Palestinians from their humanity or their basic human rights, but also has deprived them from the ability to complain or to expose what is happening to them. While still the world is working very clear, is watching today with international media. It's we as victims today in the 21st century, as Palestinian victims, we are being somehow self-censoring ourselves on how we complain or how we express our pain and suffering. Even when it comes to the killing of children, we are supposed to, even in the killing of children, innocent children, and these are not isolated incidents, these are occurring incidents, not only through the killings, but also through injuring, also through administrative detention. We are supposed to try our best, even when we have visiting solidarity groups, to find the other narrative, to try to, so that we do not sound biased, even when we're speaking about child fatalities. And that's something that is not healthy, and that is something that is not right. It doesn't feel very right. And we're feeling more and more angry. We're feeling more disappointment. We feel that we've lost trust in a world that we're supposed to, in a world that humanity is supposed to preserve each other, to defend each other. And there's something that is not working very well in the world. And I don't know if Israel is responsible for this. Definitely Israel is not the only country that is benefiting from lack of respect of human rights. Many countries, even the Palestinian Authority, unfortunately, Hamas commits human rights violations. The same thing in all of the Arab countries, Iran, the whole region, Turkey. And sadly, I was on different tours in the US. Human rights are not very well respected. And the same thing in many places in Europe. But I can tell you that Israel has been very kind, very smart in finding ways to even escape or to limit criticism of its actions. Many countries that are violating human rights, they don't care about defending their image. Israel is not only that tries to defend its image, but in many places, sadly, with power decision makers, with powers authorities around the world, even mainstream media, has been able not only to defend its position, but also to make it as a realistic way of how Israel should react to Palestinians saying no to the occupation and being dispossessed. I don't know, as a parent with kids, being a kid, maybe we were stupid. We're still stupid. It's everybody wants to become a hero. Everybody wants to save his country or the planet or whatever. Everybody wants to be the brave shepherd who chases the wolves away. And that's part of what makes children beautiful. The beauty of the spirit. And I think this is why Jesus said we are so naive when we are children or like children, because we are the ones who believe, like, we do not see the realities of oppression or the realities of power structures, but we are humble and innocent enough to see the possibilities, to dream of a better world. Yeah. Honestly, I don't know what to say. I just feel worried about kids, whether it is our kids, whether it's our family kids, kids of my neighbors, kids of Palestinians, even kids of Israelis. Many innocent people paying a price for the mistake of two mistakes. One is the greed of Zionism and the military occupation, and the mistake of the failure of the international community to put their foot down and defend human rights, regardless of where they are being violated and regardless by who is violating them. I'm using the opportunity that we don't have a speaker. I'd like to open it up for discussion, for reflections, for people to share. So people have the right to open the mic. But I think in a way I'm going to make it more difficult for people to, if you raise your hand and, we're going to open the mics. I see already Megan wants to share. Yes, Megan.
Omar, can you please tell us something that happened a few days ago? That there was a conflict between the Christian Zionists and the Jewish community at the wall. They were fighting each other. Could you say something about that?
Yeah, I mean it's more complicated. So I mean it's when we think about Christian Zionism and we think about Jewish Zionism or Zionism within Israel, we think it's the same thing. It's not really the same thing. So Messianic Christian Zionists, when they come into the country, it's part of it is that they want, many of their work is to help support Jews to come back from many parts of the world. But they also invest heavily in converting Jews to Christianity. So they support, although this remains illegal and they face challenges, they support many Messianic Jewish churches, home churches, missionary work. And in many times they think that it's the love for Zionism transcends Christian Jewish debates naively, but that's not really the experience of many people. So they think, you know, so when we think about Christian Zionism, we only see it through the perspective of where their position is on Palestinian rights, but also they have a position of their interest or genuine interest in converting Jews to Christianity, and that many Jews find this not very welcoming or supportive. So they try to be present and sharing the gospel in places that sometimes cause frictions, like the case the other day.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yes, Randy? Randy?
Yes, sorry, I wasn't able to unmute for a moment. Omar, tell us, you're a parent. Have you begun to teach your own children about ways of resistance and what is and isn't permitted? And if you don't mind sharing what those are.
You see, it's many people assume that we bring our kids, you know, and we start to tell them, you know, in 1948 or even in 1917, Lord Balfour promised this land. You know, that's not like our case at all. Our kids, you know, living under occupation, it's not like an invisible occupation. So people face certain things. Some events like are huge that they impact our kids. Like, for example, the killing of Shireen Abu Akleh. So like our kids, for them, they know that Shireen Abu Akleh was a journalist who was shot and killed. They saw even her funeral. You know, it's even my kids, they couldn't understand, because it's like when we told them, like when Shireen Abu Akleh was killed and we said we're going to go to the funeral, and they said, what's a funeral? So they were like 4 years old, 3 years old, 5 years old. And we said, you know, it's we take Shireen to Jesus. You know, that's like, I don't know how to explain death, you know, in the middle of conflict and so on. I said, we take Shireen to Jesus. And for them, when they were watching the news with their grandparents when we were at the funeral, and they saw the Israeli army beating up the kids, the funeral procession. So for them, like they would ask us, like, why does the army do not want her to go to Jesus? This is where she will find peace. So even like simple things. But the first encounter, for example, with my kids with the occupation, I mean, there's many encounters. And we're speaking about my daughter is 6 years old and our son is 4 years old. Is once when she was going, my wife was taking my son and my daughter to school. I don't know why the Israeli army shot a tear gas canister inside a school bus. And the whole bus became all filled with tear gas, and the children were crying, and they saw them across the street crying. And my wife, because of so much tear gas and shooting, she crossed the red light, and you know there were beepings and cars and panic. So for them, they shouldn't understand, like, why would the Israeli police or army throw a tear gas canister inside a school bus? Now I don't know why. Was it done by mistake? Was it done by 18-year-old soldiers, having fun, or I don't know what was the logic of doing it, but it happened. So for them, they don't understand it. Multiple times they were supposed to go to their grandmother's house, and and the army closed the checkpoint, and they spent like 4 hours at the checkpoint, and they had to pee on themselves because there was no bathroom, and so on. So these are like the things of what happens. So for example, my kids, as much as they love ice cream, they know Hebrew alphabets, and whatever is the ice cream, they don't even think twice. They say, no, that's Israeli, we do not buy it. So for them, like BDS is like the least that they can do it. And I tell you, I get shocked with how they like boycott Israeli ice cream. They just throw it back in the fridge. And not only this, they tell the shop owner, shame on you. Why do you have Israeli ice cream? You can have American ice cream. You could have Palestinian ice cream. You could so on. But again, my daughter and my family, we have also other issues. For example, my daughter has a portion of hearing loss, and her doctors are, and some of the doctors that she follows up are Israelis, Israeli Jews, and they speak Arabic, and she likes them because they like, in her concept, they are the ones who brought her hearing aid. So she says, are they Israeli? How come they are Israeli? So even as little kids, we're in the middle of a very complicated conflict where they encounter sometimes good Israelis, sometimes bad Israelis. The other day, my son was in the car and we had to stop because he got road sick, and he went to throw out, and we were on a settler road, and an Israeli soldier came out of his tower, and he said, "Is everything okay?" So in Arabic, and my daughter said, "Is he Palestinian?" I said, "No, he's an Israeli." And he said, "But why did he act so nice?" You see, it's like, because like, why did he act nice? It's very complicated being a parent for kids under occupation. They know that there's a conflict. They know that it's our grandparents are refugees, that they were kicked out from the house. They know that we cannot, that many of their friends cannot come to their house because they live on the other side of the wall. It's very complicated. And it's I don't know how to deal with it. It is part of it is we think maybe they're too young to be engaged in conflict, or to be aware of these conflicts. But another part of it, that's our reality. They need to be strong because we strongly believe that this is our land, our roots are here, and we don't want to become refugees. I don't want to go to Germany. I don't want to go to the US. I don't want to go to America. And neither are our kids. We really enjoy it. It's not like a burden and a place of suffering that we live here. It's a blessing to be a Palestinian Christian. It's a blessing to be in Jerusalem. It's something that we love. It's not like we're forced to be the gatekeepers of the Church of the Resurrection. It's our home. We love lighting candles. We love singing hymns. We love, it's worshiping with our community. And regardless of what price we have to pay, it's worth paying. That's our logic. We're just saying it's stupid. It's stupid, all of this suffering and so on. So we don't train our kids to be warriors, and we don't train our kids to be cowards, without condemning people who choose to leave and to escape the fight. We just help our kids to grow as kids in our families, and we've had the blessing to be here in Palestine, and this is and we appreciate it. So it's not easy being a parent. Sorry, it's a long.
Thank you. No. In the United States, many African American families, at a certain point in time, as their kids are getting older, probably older than yours are, they have what's sometimes referred to as the talk, when they, sort of instruct their kids about how to behave if they're stopped by police, and of course, it's all designed to try to keep them safe, to try to de-escalate the conflict. And I just wondered if there was anything similar than that you're aware of in families with maybe some slightly older children. I know yours are probably too young to really understand, except in the most basic terms. And I see that you're trying to educate them that just because someone's Israeli or just because someone's Palestinian, it doesn't say anything necessarily about their character. But
But we are divided. I mean, I wish we could be like one state, everybody's living together and one humanity. But we are different. An Israeli is different from a Palestinian.
Sure.
An Israeli, it would be very difficult if they do whatever they do. It's going to be very difficult to shoot an Orthodox Jew or just to shoot them in the head and just say forget about it, or let them bleed until they die. A Palestinian, this is acceptable. This is allowed. We're not equal. We're not equal. We're not the same group of people. That's the reality. I mean, I know that's not what we believe in. That's not on a theory level. It's very difficult to admit, but Palestinians get treated from it as a completely different way from how Israelis are treated. An Israeli Jew is treated in a very different way than an Israeli Arab. We live in a world that there are two species. We're not the same humankind. We belong, at least in the eyes of Israelis or the Israeli soldiers or the Israeli decision makers, as inferior species. And we don't like it. That's the problem. It is many places around the world, people accept it and adopt it and say that's part of life. We are a different caste system. The problem is that I don't know if it's a problem or a blessing that we do not accept it. And I don't know what is a good parent. You teach your kids to be inferior, or you teach your kids to be equal. I don't know. It's what we should do. If you teach them to be inferior, maybe they have a better chance of survival. If you teach them to ask for their rights, that makes life more dangerous to them. Yes, Netta Golan is with us. Netta, many would like to hear you share if that's fine with you and if you're willing and able. Yes, Ginevra. So please unmute yourself. I've already sent you a request if you want. Otherwise, it's okay. Don't feel pressured. Yes, Ginevra, would you like to share?
There's so many different directions I am personally going, but one that really horrifies me is that people don't seem to understand, and it's not emphasized anywhere in the press in the US, that the instructions now are shoot to kill. The Washington Post did an article about the shooting that happened in Jenin. And if you read the comments, which it becomes so upsetting because the people blamed the two jihadists that were killed, who were just walking down the street. They weren't attacking anyone. They weren't planning anything. They were just walking down the street. They considered them at fault for the killing of the 14-year-old boy, because if they hadn't been in the crowd, the Israelis wouldn't have been shooting. I think it's important somehow that it gets out, because I really think that ever since Shireen was killed, there is an emboldenedness in the approach of the Israeli military and what they can do. But that's my opinion. I just want to add on from what Randy was talking about and what you are talking about. My son is Black. I have been physically present in 4 instances where driving while Black happened, where the police stopped for no reason other than the fact that there was a Black man driving. I know what it's like to not be able to trust the police for protection. I know what it's like that whenever my son is a little late getting home, to be terrified. I know of things that he's gone through, of how they wait until you're in an isolated area to stop the car, to pull you over. It's my son is probably older than you, Omar, but I still have this fear. And I know that the reason he survived the traffic stops is because he's learned that he must control his own self-respect. He must control his own sense of worth. And not lash out. I know that he comes home, and I'm thankful. But I just, it is not easy to live where you cannot trust the police, when you cannot trust those in charge. And the confusion that I see in the US is very frightening for me, because I don't see where there's any rules. And so I think that I try to understand what it must be like for you and your family. And I think I am so thankful that you still find the joy of being there in Jerusalem, that you still find the joy in being able to worship together. And I thank you so much for sharing, for being open about what you experience, what your friends experience, what your neighbors experience. I also want to thank you for sharing that film last week of the wedding. It shows that, I think it showed that even when there's no direct abuse, there's abuse. There's the mental strain that you can't go about a regular life because you have to, because there's just that unknown of whether someone who has power is going to interrupt your day. And so there's just I just send much love to you and your family, and pray for your safety and for your courage. But it is not easy to live without being able to trust authority. And
maybe, I mean, it's not like, I mean, this is, I think I sympathize with your son. I mean, from our context here, Ginevra. But maybe it's not only that we fail to, we lose trust in our, I mean, it's in our rights to live equally, but maybe we are so confident with who we are that we realize the weakness or the failure of others because of hatred to see the humanity in us. So I don't know who's more powerful, the people who let go and control themselves, or the people who abuse. It's a bit, you know, I always, now it is a way to control myself, and this is only when I became a parent, because it changes some part of you when you are a parent. I don't know, at least for me, I changed completely. And when I see these soldiers in a way, and they're even at the worst time, when they're very violent and they're very angry and so on, I look, and I don't know why I feel that somehow they have a parent, and the parent is looking at them as their child, and the parent is somehow trying to say, be patient with them, they're my kids, they're stupid. And that's like, this is what encourages me. sometimes that it is, I see them as little foolish kids, and I see their parents disappointed with them. The problem in the Middle East region now and in Palestine and Israel, that the parents are not these caring and loving kids who see parents who want their kids to behave better and to see the humanity of the others. I think that many of the parents are pushing their kids to do stupid things. That's the disease. These are the demons at least in both Palestine and Israel. I hope I'm mistaken. So it seems that through the past few years, we've trained you well to remain silent in the Kumi meetings. Unlike that. So we encourage. So I see the people who participated the Thursday service, they're more able to share and energetic, I see. So please do share if you want. We don't promise that this will be the case every week. Yeah. So actually, Sabil, we've stopped for a number of years holding young adult conferences. We're holding a young adult conference this July. Actually, there's 2 trips this July taking place. One with Friends of Sabil North America. It's a combination of Friends of Sabil America and the leaders from the African American community. They're coming to Palestine. So if you know people who are interested in July, I think there's still spaces. And if you know some young people that you would like us to inspire them to be stupid and foolish and to do irresponsible stuff, please send them towards our direction. Children, grandchildren, neighbors, people at your church. There are still spaces for people to be joining us for the Young Adult Conference. I have to, yes, Jennifer, could you please unmute yourself?
I'm a Franciscan, Rochester, Minnesota Franciscan. And, you know, one of the ways that I try to come on Tuesday and Thursday, I've tended to be rather timid or have this disease of being nice. And in our own community, when there's conflict of the community members with those in leadership, you know, we're sort of, we can speak out against the bishops, and that's kind of heroic. That's sort of what women, nuns do. But when it's internal in your own community, and it's very hard to know, should you do that? Should you put people, embarrass them? Should you speak out and say and ask, how did you ever make this decision? Because these are people before they were elected, you know, that were just kind of, and I've been in leadership, so I know it's an awkward change. But my point is, I have been so inspired by these 2 weekly meetings that you moderate, Omar, and the stories you tell about everyday life, that when my tendency is, oh, what the heck, I remember the Palestinians. And I remember, you know, not just my own country that is so at fault for how this continues, but internally, when it's much closer, which a religious community is, I think, no, you really have to learn to be clear, to learn to clarify what the concerns are, not just have a personal disagreement. So anyway, I just want to thank you I guess. And I just thank everybody that comes here from all over the world, because those of us that don't, can get in a car and go to Hy-Vee or go someplace and are pretty sure we're going to come back, just don't have an experience that you describe for us. But it is possible for us to be moved and horrified. And also admire the courage that's in the human spirit when it's tapped on or when it's not smothered. So anyway, just thank you.
Thank you. And I mean, this is why so many people love Saint Francis. I mean, Saint Francis was a voice of justice, was a person who spoke. Not only he spoke truth to power in every community, in every context. I mean, he was a person who spoke truth and justice and promoted coexistence. But sometimes, it's even within the same community that they worship him, it's or they admire or they respect these leaders. Sometimes they lose the connection with these leaders. It's actually most Franciscan priests that we encounter here in Jerusalem and so on. They talk about how Saint Francis spoke to the birds and spoke to the animals. They don't speak about how he spoke justice to the Pope, to the Catholic Church, to the Muslims, to the Christians, to the rich, to the poor, to the warlords. And I think it's part of it. It's the words of justice. I mean, that's what we learn in Palestinian liberation theology. We stand for truth and justice regardless of the identity of the oppressor or the oppressed. I mean, that's because God does not have identities or preferences of one group over another. It's if God has sympathizes with the people who are oppressed, and that's our faith. Friends, I mean, it's 1 hour has passed from another Sabil Kumi week. Many of you are, we're trying to get an amazing young person, a person with so many gifts, a person who is changing, is fixing. I would even say he's like Saint Francis. This guy, his name is Hagob. Please remember him in your prayers. He is reforming the church. He is the one who is a 22-year-old kid versus the patriarch and all of the mobs and the corruption inside the church. When people felt that there is no hope to fix one of our major churches, that corruption is so much, the church has sunk into so much corruption, a 20-year-old kid believes, puts his foot down, and he's making miracles. Something that will inspire us all. So we hope to get him in the coming few weeks with us to share his story. On his own, he has he's bringing in the coming 10 days. He wrote every Armenian lawyer he knows of and their friends, and he's bringing a delegation of 15 top lawyers from the US, from Canada, and so on to come and stand in solidarity with him pro bono. He didn't know them before. He just Googled them. He wrote them. When people believe, when people want to be good, when people allow the Holy Spirit to work with them, or they are humble themselves to have the Holy Spirit to lead them, miracles happen. So I want us to have, I want to ask for the people who are able to or interested, please mention Hagob in your prayers, this wonderful young guy who tells us that it's possible to move mountains. Thank you all for being with us, and I hope to see you next week. Don't miss next week. And please share this event with other friends. Okay, friends. Take care and keep up the good work. God bless you.
you.